So here I am without much to say, and needing to not send a Malcolm McLaren barge out onto the river to take focus from the Queen, but to make the Queen look good without taking offense or without taking focus from her, from the main action. But at the same time, don't bore the audience. The audience has come, they've given you their time, they've given you their money. They're here to see a show, not just the Queen and you off checking your watch. So how do you do that? And I had a fantastic mentor, a director named Kevin Coleman at Shakespeare and Company in Lenox, Massachusetts, who used some work on the game of status to animate a scene. And his idea was that we as humans are always sizing each other up, whether you are actors on a stage, wondering why, if I'm third soldier on the left, why am I not second soldier on the left? Why am I not first soldier on the right? What does the king have on me anyway, et cetera, and sort of letting all those calculations and machinations have free reign in their mind, as I would argue they do for most people in most circumstances, and let that animate your thinking, your physicality, so you stay tuned in. You don't check out, and you're interesting. If an audience member gets bored by what the king and the queen are doing and their eye launches on you, they can tell you're alive. There's a story going on in you, right? And so that's one idea of the play of status, sort of wondering who's up, who's down, and being curious about it without necessarily needing to change it. So I thought, well, how do we bring that liveliness and that awareness out into the business world, essentially? And where that became very alive during some scenes that I was doing in a production of King Lear a couple of years back. So that was my night job. And during my day job, I was, among other things, coaching groups of very accomplished young business professionals who were applicants to the Wharton School to get ready for group interviews. So their interview process would be, rather than I'm the admissions officer and you, Mike, are the applicant and I'm going to interview you, the Wharton School's interview process is, I'm going to put 5 applicants in a room together, all of whom have made the first cut, all of whom we're interested in admitting. We're going to give you a task, we're going to give you some time, and we're going to watch you carry it out. There's no appointed leader, there's no appointed hierarchy, so high ambiguity and really having to think on your feet. What I saw is that my coaching clients who were participating in these practice groups, who were so polished, poised, accomplished, successful, on it every time they talked to me, on it every time they were writing an essay, fell apart when there was no script. They were so concerned and they wanted to manage and overmanage and control and map out every contingency for what might happen in a 35-minute period with 5 humans in the room. And again, as my dear theater mentor Kevin Coleman would say, good luck with that, right? It's never going to happen. We are all improvising all the time. So I remember in working with a group who were particularly reliant on me to answer every question for them so they could plan out every contingency that any person might ever do at any time. I got frustrated and I finally said, guys, here's your mission during this interview, should you choose to accept it, and you do, and you better. Let your mantra be, around this table of these 5 applicants who are technically my competitors, my mantra is, everything I do supports everybody in this room looking great, including but not limited to myself, and everybody in this room gets admitted to this school. So let's not pull a Lord of the Flies thing and who prevails, right? And who gets his glasses ground in the dust. Who was that? Piggy, I think. Lord of the Flies. Yeah. Piggy. Yeah, his specs, right?
More specs.
Yeah. More specs. But yeah, there is no Piggy in this room, and that's the point. And I think at that moment, minds were a little blown. And they stopped talking, right? Which I thought, okay, we're thinking now. But anyway, that's the fight that I've picked and that my firm, Agon Advisors, has picked in terms of corporate training, that corporate training world, presentation skills, leadership development. I think a lot of that market is centered on two premises. One, that you can plan for and manage all contingencies and interactions. And two, success equals never making a mistake.
Well, yeah, I mean, just to interrupt, I think what's so interesting about that is that there was so much chatter for such a long time on this sort of art of the war approach. There was a time where every executive was reading Art of War. And if you really read the book, it's not as aggressive as it may sound, but they took it that way. It was about life as a war, and it's about besting other people, and business as a war. And what you're saying is the best way, it's not a war. It's about status, and the best way to get more status is to give more status to other people. So for a certain section of the economy, especially the types of people, I went to Penn, as you mentioned, the people who go to Wharton, that is actually not the way they're trained to behave. And so I think that is an adversarial in the best possible way, point.
Yeah, and it's just back to Wharton. There's some wonderful work being done there by Adam Grant in his book Give and Take, and talks about who's in command versus who's in demand, and competing on the idea of dominance, which I think is the paradigm that I primarily learned in business school, and we're not going to talk about what year that was, but of having the biggest club, having the most money, talking over folks, and competing on dominance versus competing on prestige, cleverness. Right. So if we're gonna put it back into the jungle, and there's a wonderful article in The Atlantic by Jerry Useem that came out a couple of years ago, really getting into this, saying, so the biggest orangutan in the jungle might have been the one who got the girl, right? Until a smaller orangutan had a better idea about how to get the coconuts off the tree. It was smarter, and so the big one, the big orangutan is competing on dominance. The smarter orangutan is competing on prestige. And so I think one way to cultivate your prestige is to lift everybody up. Once you are so smart that you figured out how to get more coconuts than everybody else, share them, right? Offer them. And I think that's another it's a sacred calf that I'm working on, and we're gestating at Agon Advisors. Is
it's interesting. I often listen to James Altucher, the fellow podcast, and he'll talk about how he never really cares about people ripping off his ideas. Like, he thinks the concept of an NDA is absolutely ridiculous. Like, if someone gives sign it, but he's like, it's so silly because he's like, there are a million ideas. He'd rather give ideas to people because either they're going to implement it and there's enough to go around, or 98% of people won't, but he's just given them something, cement his value in their brain. So it's kind of a way of raising status.
I'm interested in the relationship between my thinking about status and your thinking about hype. Are any of your hype masters working on this model, or is there a real divide there, do you think?
Yeah, no, I don't think there's a divide at all. I think with some of the people, there's a divide. I mean, I would say that to risk getting political, Donald Trump is a hype artist. He uses a lot of those principles. Anyone who says he's dumb, that's neither here nor there. He's probably not a Rhodes Scholar, but he's very natural at that. But he has a very dominance mindset. But there are a lot of other people who are very much good at strategically elevating other people to get their way. So, I mean, there was a gentleman, a guy named Edward Bernays. I think Time Magazine called him the most influential person of the 20th century that you haven't heard of. And he basically created PR. He invented the term public relations, which was originally called propaganda, until it got a bad reputation because of how it was used in the world wars. But something he's behind a lot of huge public relations campaigns. And one of the things he did, he actually made bacon a popular breakfast food. It wasn't popular before him in the United States. And the way he did
Bless his heart. That's a gift to society.
It was a gift to society. I mean, people ate bacon. It just was not bacon and eggs wasn't the quintessential breakfast. So Beechnut was one of his clients who was a major pork producer, at the time. And the way he did it was he had cultivated over the years relationships with medical professionals, and one in particular who had a massively powerful sort of platform and connections to other doctors. So he got this doctor to write a letter that basically said, falsely in this case, that bacon was the perfect breakfast food health-wise because it replaces the energy you lose during sleep. And this doctor recommended that to like 5,000 doctors. So all across the country, doctors started recommending this kinds. Now, the reason I bring this up, I do not recommend that you flat out lie like that and whatever. Okay. But I think what's interesting is what a lot of hype artists do is they make it kind of look like a grassroots swelling of attention. But what they really do is they spend a lot of time in advance cultivating relationships. And you don't cultivate relationships with prominent people by dominating them. You cultivate relationships with prominent people by becoming their friends, So what you'll see a lot of really successful hype artists do is they have powerful friends that they can feel very comfortable saying, listen, hey, I just started this new business. You've got a radio show with 5 million listeners. Could you mention the thing? Like you were asking your buddy, you know what I mean? But to do that, you have had to have done favors for them in the past without expecting anything in return. You've had to get them into your confidence. So the more you can cultivate that personality, the people who go around, getting their way by dominating people, it's only a matter of time before there's a backlash. You need something from them. They're going to say, yeah, right, fella, get out of here, right? So it's amazing how often you see that dynamic among these kinds of
Right. And I think that might be another idea that at the Status Paradox we're picking a fight with, is that there's something instrumental or dehumanizing or manipulative about what gets called networking. That, there is, there are all sorts of exploitative ways to relate to your fellow humans. And there are all kinds of ways and powers of expressing genuine interest, concern, generosity, and that it's not kumbaya necessarily, which isn't a bad song anyway, but this can be and is very good business. You get more done, you make more money, you close more sales, you're more creative. So
it's also like I think, is it manipulative? I don't know. It's manipulative when you try to give someone a favor, get them on the hook, and then ask them for something 2 weeks later so they feel bad about it. I mean, that's manipulative. Right. But I mean, I don't know. I mean, you would think that hanging around with prominent people who share your interests and who are in your field is worth doing, just that it's fun, that it's interesting, that those are the kinds of people you want to be. But I mean, a lot of people complain, I'd be successful, but I don't know the right people. It's surprisingly doable to get to know the right people if you have that generous mindset, because there's almost always something you can offer them. It doesn't have to be much. There's almost always something that you have that they want,
Right. It's interesting. You have me thinking about my mom, who is not the best source of career advice for me, let's say. But I remember the one good piece she gave me, and it was a really good one, is talk to people about their work. People like to talk about their work, right?
And I would say I noticed in a work environment where everyone's talking about work, talk to them about their hobbies and their kids. So in other words, like something that I do. So a couple things. Like I come from a place where this is the kind of person I am. I like to operate this way. I remember there was a certain business colleague I had, and we were like friendly, but her kid was trying to figure out what to do after college. And I basically gave her a bunch of writing work, and because I needed the work done, but why not give her a chance? And our relationship after that cemented, so firmly, right? Also, something I'll do is I go on Twitter, and if I want to get to know somebody who's like prominent, I think the worst thing you can do is say, I am a huge admirer of your Six Sigma process. Can I pick your brain about this and that? Because that's what everyone's asking them about. What I'll do is I'll look for things that are like little hints of stuff that I could talk to them outside of work. So like, I'm from Philadelphia. My favorite baseball team ever has been 93 Phillies, that specific team,
Okay.
And if someone mentions that, 'cause that was a really like down and dirty team, talk about that, or talk about Brian Clark from Copy Blog